how surprised were you by this outcome?
I'm not surprised by the outcome, Skip, because I thought Alabama would win. I'm surprised by how easy they made it look and the margin of the outcome. Skip, it's not like they beat Arkansas or Missouri, who doesn't have the level of five-star recruits that Alabama has.
Yep.
Ohio State can go toe-to-toe every single year as far as 4- and 5-star recruits. This is why every single year they're really the only Big Ten representative. When you say, okay, you look at Clemson, you look at Alabama, and then who you go to? Automatically you go to Ohio State, because those are the three teams that year in and year out get the most top 300 high school players. And so I was like, okay, the game's going to be close. I'm saying, especially watching Ohio State last week, what they did to Clemson. They dismantled Clemson. And although Clemson is not what it was a couple of years ago and last year, but Skip, they're a good football team. They got the number one pick in the draft. They got talented 4- and 5-star players on the offensive and defensive line. And Ohio State took them apart. So I'm saying to myself, okay, the game is going to be close. I expect Alabama to win. But, Skip, this wasn't close. The only thing that prevented Alabama from probably scoring 70 is that Mac Jones fumbled early, and it gave Ohio State an opportunity to tie the ball game 14-14, and DeVonta going out first play of the third quarter. Other than that, Skip, they were about to hang 70 and probably put over 700 yards on Ohio State. I've never seen anything like it. And, Skip, I'm saying to myself, they got to be due for a bag. Skip, you can't play like this every single game, can you? Can you get 45, 50 points every game, 500, 600 yards every game? Nobody has an answer for DeVonta Smith. Well, they're going to double him. Well, Wade said, I want him. That's what Skip. You see, when you ask for problems, when you send for somebody that didn't send for you, this is what happens. Skip, this is unbelievable. I mean, the way Mac Jones was throwing the football, Skip, and if you look at him, he's pinpoint accurate. He's the most athletic guy. Skip, when you look at him, you're like, he ain't about to win, he ain't about to do anything but play football. But, Skip, the throws that he was making, he's throwing the ball and DeVonta never breaks stride. He's throwing the ball and Najee never breaks stride. The guys never break stride. It's not a 15-yard catch and the guy gets tackled. He's throwing the ball and the guy can continue to run. Yes, Skip, am I surprised that they won? No, I'm surprised in how easy they made it look in taking the Ohio State apart. 28 points. And just when I thought last year, Skip, we watched LSU and we came out here and talked about, Skip, that might have been the best offensive team we've ever seen. They one-upped them. They swept every offensive award except the Mackey Award. If they had a receiver, he got the Biletnikoff. The running back got the Doak Walker. The quarterback got the Unitas. They got the Remington for the center. They got the outlet for the left tackle. Skip, and I was like, they do for a bad. And if they have a bad game, Ohio State can get them. One team came within 14 points all year. That was Florida. And they hung, 600 plus yards on, maybe 700 on them. Skip, this was unbelievable. Broke the SEC scoring mark, 48 points a game. What do you say? The only thing I'm disappointed in, and I know he's going to be okay because there's plenty of time, Skip, DeVonta Smith might going to have 350 yards, maybe close to 20 catches. Skip, I've never seen anything like this. And he does it so effortless, Skip, when you look at it, you're like, he ain't moving that fast. But all you do is see more and more separation between him and the defender. Sark called an unbelievable game.
Steve Sarkisian,
the offensive coordinator. Skip, a lot of times what we see when guys go get jobs, now they're focused on their new job. They got to get their staff together. They got to get their recruiting. And I don't know if they put the time that they need to make sure everything goes well before they leave. This might have been the best game I've seen him. And he's called some good ones over the last couple of years, Skip. But this might have been the best game he's ever called. And Mac Jones and everybody was outstanding. And Coach Saban said might be most proud of this team, considering you got to test every day. They didn't know if they were going to play, and then might miss a game here or there. But to play 13 SEC games, no out of schedule, no FCS, no bull jive, Skip. Alabama did it. I am surprised by how easy they made this look.
Because you wouldn't even give me 7.5 points yesterday.
I would not.
Would you do it now?
Yeah. I give you 22 and a half.
You give me more than that. Because, as you say, if DeVonta had been able to finish the game, it would have gotten really ugly. because Mac Jones was still in there throwing to the bitter end. So I don't know. He might have gone for 100. I don't know. They might have tried to hang 100 on him.
And Mac Jones might have threw for 600.
Yeah.
Or definitely been in the fives.
Okay. Now, before I launch into all of the above, allow me to say that I did think this would be a fairly close game. At least I thought it would be competitive.
Right.
Because I thought Ohio State could shorten the game, as Coach Parcells once said once upon a time about a Super Bowl game against Jim Kelly and the, what did they call them? The K-gun. Yeah, K-guns. It was another spread offense.
Right.
Throw it all over the field. Okay, we will shorten the field. And it came down to a field goal in that, which was wide, as I recall, right. I believe.
Correct. Scott Norwood.
And Scott Norwood. And so the Giants pulled off a quote-unquote upset that time because they controlled the clock and controlled the football and kept the K-gun, Jim Kelly's offense, mostly off the field.
40 minutes to 20 minutes, time of possession.
40 to 20. Okay, so I thought with my former Oklahoma Sooner, Trey Sermon, who didn't make it at Oklahoma. He got beaten out at Oklahoma and said, well, I'm going to transfer to the Ohio State. And he sort of rose up the depth chart from nowhere, and all of a sudden at the end of the year, he emerged.
Skip, let me ask you a question this, Skip. How do you get beaten out at Oklahoma and say, you know what, I'm going to pick up and I'm going to go to Ohio State with all the, they loaded.
They are loaded, and Master Teague looked like he was the guy until all of a sudden Trey Sermon was the guy.
Yes.
And Trey Sermon, obviously, against Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, had 331. And then he came right back against Clemson with 193.
Right.
And he started making Justin Fields' job a whole lot easier because he could do this and pull it back and throw it.
Correct.
And I thought, well, maybe they can pound away with Trey Sermon and he can take advantage of what I considered an average Alabama defense that gave up 46 points to Florida in the SEC championship game, right? It was 52 to 46. Well, I expected that sort of a game, except with a little lower score.
Correct.
Because I thought Trey Sermon would pound away. So what happened on literally the first play of the game? It's the first play of the game, if we could please see this play, because it looked pretty routine to me. This didn't look like anything special. I don't know. I don't really see it. I don't.
But when you see this angle, Skip, and you see how that's how I broke my collarbone in that very same play.
Did you? Well, it looks like he broke his. I don't know.
When you get he got pinned, Skip.
But it's on the fall. It wasn't on the initial collision.
You fall, and then the 300-pounder fall. Look at this, Skip. Right on top. Boom.
Ooh. Ooh. And he's gone.
He's gone.
And I'm like, what?
Literally the first play.
He's gone. And all of a sudden, you're back to Master Teague, who's not quite the bulldozer that Trey Sermon can be. Trey Sermon has a little bit of Derrick Henry. He's not Derrick Henry, but he can do that sort of damage. But it requires 30 carries over the course of a game to control the clock and pound you down.
Ohio State needed to win a game, Skip, something like 31-28, 28-24.
Right.
Once the game started getting into the mid-30s, the 40s, that wasn't a game they could win.
So guess what the final time of possession was last night? Would you believe that Alabama had the ball for 37 minutes to Ohio State's 23 minutes? What do you think's going to happen? That's going to happen. Okay, it flipped on its head. It went exactly the wrong way. And believe it or not, Alabama's offense converted on 3rd and 4th down 8 of 13. Well, you're in trouble. Yeah, they're just going to keep the ball and keep the ball and play keep away. And then guess what they were in the red zone last night? How about 6 for 6? You're going to get wiped out. Yes. And they did. Now back to DeVonta Smith. I've said this before to you on this show. I have never seen anything like him in college football. So think about what just happened. Ohio State has a lot of athletes. They had COVID problems, and I don't know their depth chart well enough to know exactly how many had to miss the game. I know 2 defensive linemen had to miss the game, 2 starters in the defensive line. I'm not sure about the rest. But I also do know that they have a very good coaching staff that knows how to play defense. They have a pretty good concept. Even though Trevor Lawrence wound up throwing for 400, they gave him some problems because they put some heat on him. Yes. Okay? So they had 10 days. They didn't have the old month to get ready, but they had 10 days to try to figure out how to stop the Heisman Trophy winner. Meanwhile, the Heisman winner is winning the Heisman, and you know and I know how much that takes out of you. it's what they call the rubber chicken circuit, and you've been going to the award.
You eat a bunch, you're not working out.
You're eating too much, you're distracted, you're pulled in 20,000 ways, and you can't get focused in time to play the game of the year. I don't think it mattered.
Because you know why, Skip? It was virtually. He didn't have to miss a game. He didn't have to miss one practice.
I guess not.
He probably practiced.
Okay. Meanwhile, you mentioned Steve Sarkisian, former coach at USC.
In Washington.
What was happening to Sark during this period? He's getting hired by the University of Texas. It's a huge thing. It's a bombshell story.
Yes.
It's a lot of distraction because on the fly, you are torn in 20,000 ways because you're trying to recruit on the fly. You're trying to recruit your staff on the fly.
Yes.
You're trying to keep the media in Austin, Texas, and the state of Texas happy on the fly. Your head coach is furious with you. I've been through this so many times with so many staffs where somebody got hired before the Super Bowl. Right. Jimmy Johnson's staff, every year there's somebody, and Jimmy was out of his mind, and he should have been out of his mind because it's a lot of distraction for a team trying to play the game of the year. Okay, so all that is mounting, and on top of it all, Jalen Waddle shouldn't have played last night. There's no way. I felt for him, and I loved it that he got, if we could see the one, he got a little push pass, a little like 2-yard pass. This is early in the game on the first drive. It's just like a little sort of shovel pass. And he ran. He looked okay while he was running inbounds. And then once he tried to put on the skids a little bit, it got him. It bit him. And he had to hobble all the way back across the field to the bench. Okay, I'm happy that he got to make the catch. He ended up catching three balls. But why he came back in the game after that, I have no idea.
It should have been a ceremonial like what they did with Dixon.
Yes.
I think that Landon Dixon. The center.
The center.
He had
for one last play. Okay.
He should just come in.
Okay, I got it because you know, I get it. These kids have invested so much in this, but obviously I don't think they're getting paid. They're getting room, board, and tuition. But for him, he's going to be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Why are you risking it? And again, you're a kid and you get carried away. You think you're bulletproof.
You do, Skip.
I can come back. I'll be okay.
You do.
But again, he was clearly hampered. It reminded me a little bit of Terrell Owens in the Super Bowl against the Patriots.
But T.O. didn't limp that bad.
He didn't limp that bad. You could tell in the warm-ups that T.O. couldn't run the way he usually runs.
Right, but he did. But that was only like 5 weeks. It was 11 weeks since he had his surgery.
Okay.
So I could just imagine if T.O. had. But like I said, Skip, T.O. had, hyperbaric chambers. T.O. had had the best of everything.
Right.
And I'm not saying Alabama doesn't have great medical staff, but T.O. was able to get things that I'm sure this kid wasn't able to get.
Okay, so my point was you could just watch him in pregame because they had a lot of shots of him in the pregame, and he just didn't look right to me. Okay, you don't think the Ohio State doesn't know that in pregame? So what are they thinking about their coverages? We don't have to really worry about him because he can fly now. He can run by you.
Running like that, he's not running by anybody.
Okay, and just for the record, just so people let this sink in, there's not a Jerry Jeudy this year. There's not a Henry Ruggs this year because last year you had all four of those guys.
Right.
Well, it's a track team.
Right.
It's unbelievable. That's why I kept saying on Tua, are you sure? Are you sure?
Right.
Because it's like, well, I'll try, because he had Najee last year also.
Right.
I can do this, I can do this, I can flip it to Najee. And again, the two best weapons in college football this year were that running back and especially that receiver.
And they're on the same team.
And they're on the same team. Okay, so here's what got me. DeVonta Smith is about 6'1" and weighs 175. But as Ryan Day said after the game, he runs a lot stronger than he looks.
He is.
Because his physique is slender. But he runs with such strength.
And that's why they underestimate him, because you look at his wiry frame and you're like, this dude 170 pounds. Oh, I'm going to break him in two.
We can press him. We can jam him. We can knock him off his routes.
No, you can't.
Guess what? You cannot. So they tried everything. They tried deep. They tried to come up short. They tried double. They tried triple. They tried zone. They tried man. They tried everything, and nothing even remotely worked because, as Ryan Day said after the game, we couldn't stop him from separating. He just separates from whatever coverage it is.
Well, Skip, it's kind of hard to rotate coverage because you still got to worry about, like, running back. So if I put 7 men in the box, because you have to – the dude had 30 touchdowns. He was the best running back in football. We got to pay him some attention.
Usually the meat and potatoes defensive coordinator would say, I need to worry about him first.
Right.
With this group, you better worry about that receiver first.
And you see how they was really worried about Najee. They felt like our corners, we're physical enough.
Yeah.
We can match up. We got talent on the outside also.
All right.
But you ain't got talent like this kid. This kid was special, and he had a special year.
So Najee ran for 83 yards, so that's not lethal, right? No. Did Najee hurt you catching the ball? Yeah, he caught 7 for 79. That's pretty good. So he hurt you catching it more than running.
Right, they're swinging out of the backfield for the touchdown.
Okay, but did they really have any other weapon that you had to deal with?
No.
It's really, from a receiver perspective, it's DeVonta or bust.
Right.
And you give up 215 in the first half. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
I was like, this dude. I thought Tyreek. I said, this dude literally pulling the Tyreek in the first half.
That's
Tyreek got 203 in the first quarter, but this dude got 12 catches for 215 and 3 touchdowns in a half.
In a half against a defense that is clearly just completely poised to try to stop you.
Like I said, you do this against Missouri. You do this against Arkansas that doesn't have the level of talent.
I'll throw Vanderbilt in there.
Okay, you do that against Vanderbilt, Skip, and everybody's like, oh, that's Vanderbilt. He should have done it. Skip, that's the Ohio State. You know what they represent. The Bosa's, and they have Jeff Okudah. They got Denzel Ward. They loaded on that side of the ball.
Okay, and now back to the quarterback. All year, I have resisted saying this about Mac Jones because I keep saying product of, because there's too much talent. Well, there's not as much talent as Tua had a year ago, especially at wideout.
No.
And yet, he was Joe Burrow-esque. In fact, I have to say...
He might be more accurate than Joe Burrow.
He went just a little click above Joe Burrow because his QBR was the greatest ever in the history of college football.
Completion percentage.
So if you go down the QBR list, it goes Mac Jones, then it was Kyler, then it was Joe Burrow.
Right. I don't know, Skip, if anybody's going to have a season throwing the ball like this. If you look at 41 touchdowns, 5 picks, you look at the completion percentage, you look at his QBR, the efficiency in which he threw it. Skip, this is unbelievable. Okay. People don't realize how hard it is to do what he did. And everything is in stride. Guys are not having to break stride and catch the ball and fall down because he threw it behind them. That sprint option, and when DeVonta started and came back, it's in stride. He hit 18. I don't really know his name. He reminds you of
Mechie.
Minchie is 8. Okay. He reminds you of Hunter Renfrow.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. The little slot receiver.
Yep.
But everything is in stride. Give the guy an opportunity to run. Give the guy an opportunity to protect himself. After watching LSU, Skip, we came in. Did Joe Burrow just have the greatest season? I believe Joe had a little better season. It'd have been interesting to see had they played the full. They were 2 games short. So he's not going to get to 60 touchdowns. But 5,000 yards within the realm of possibility. And the
reason I rank Joe a little higher is because LSU, in the history of its program, had never had a quarterback.
Right.
Nothing like that. So he came out of nowhere, obviously transferring from Ohio State. Had a mediocre first year, and then all of a sudden, boom, took off.
I really knew Mac Jones could play when I watched him against Auburn. Although they lost the game because he threw 2 pick sixes, if you watch the way he threw the ball, and then you watch him in the bowl game against Michigan, you say, this dude can play.
Yep.
The question was, were enough players around him coming? Was Najee going to come back? Was DeVonta going to come back? Was that offensive line?
I do think this is a key point. Those 2 came back for 1 more year when they didn't have to. Both would have been, I'm pretty sure, first-round picks.
Coach Saban mentioned something last night. He said sometimes guys can come back and increase their value.
Yep.
DeVonta might have been a late first, maybe early second.
Yep.
What he's done now is played himself in possibly to a top 5 pick.
He's a top 5 pick. He will be.
Najee's probably going to go into the first round now. The offensive lineman, Leatherwood, he's going to be a first rounder.
They're going to have 6 first-round picks, which is... That's all you need to know.
And Skip, and I was talking about Skip, I don't know. They don't have the depth at D-line like when they had Jaron Reed.
They do not.
Donald Thomas. They don't have. But Barmore, I don't know how Coach Saban must be got a clone or something because he go find them. And if you look at them, Skip, they all built alike.
It's the same.
They're like 6'2", 300 plus, and they're agile.
Yep, and they don't look. they don't look the part.
No.
He didn't look in great shape to me, but he is just unblockable, just slithery, just knifing through, blowing up plays.
Yes.
And now we're back to the offense and back to Mac Jones. Will he be a first round? Yes, he's risen up the board. He's going to be somebody's first round pick. We'll talk more about him versus Justin Fields later.
Okay.
But it boiled down to me last night that, remember, that game early second quarter was 14-all because he did make one mistake because he got blindsided by the he just was unawares and he turned and the blitzer was in his face and he lost the football. Right. And Justin Fields, to his credit, took it home. And all of a sudden it's 14-all early second quarter. And then a tornado hit.
You need, Skip, after that, you really needed to get your defense to get a stop.
You just need one stop, and they couldn't. And it was 21-3 the rest of the second quarter.
And so now, for all intents and purposes, Skip, it's over. And then guess what happens? Alabama's getting the ball out of the half.
Yep.
So you really need to not let them put any points on the board. I know you only held them to 3, and you got, like I said, had DeVonta not gone out, that game was about to be over at that moment. The moment they go up 42-14, 42-17, that game's about to be over. Give them credit. They kept fighting. I also thought, Skip, the hip was more of an issue than what Justin Fields let on because he didn't seem so a willing participant to run the football. He was almost
when he did get loose, he really got loose.
He was almost forced. He's like, man, there's nobody on the left side. Yep. There's nobody on the right. Let me just take off.
I'll buy that. Yep, I agree. But he still had – he was pretty good running.
He only had like three or four carries?
6 carries. No, he had 6 carries for 73 yards.
But then they started to get home. They started getting closer and closer. They started getting closer and closer, knocking him down. But Skip, I did 52-24. That's the second 50-point game scored.
This is the greatest offense in the history of college football. I'm partial to some in the past.
Yes.
You can argue different eras, different cases.
Yes.
You can go back to the Army team in 1944, averaged 54 points a game.
Doug Blanchard.
Yeah, it's the 4 horsemen.
It's the inside out.
Okay. But then my Oklahoma team, 1971, is the greatest game ever played against Nebraska. They lost, but they averaged, I think it was 47 a game. Mm-hmm. And I like, because it was the advent of the wishbone, and nobody knew how to stop Greg Pruitt and the wishbone. Okay, so that's a whole nother era. And then
wasn't Joe Washington on that team too?
Mm-hmm, but he came the next year. Okay. But the point was that then we got all the way to USC with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, our man Reggie, and both of them from Fox, obviously now. And I thought those, because that offense destroyed my Sooners in the national championship.
They put up 55
in that same stadium in, what was it, 2004, I think it was.
Right.
So the point is, we could argue all day, but I got to tell you, just on sheer explosiveness, I've never seen anything like DeVonta Smith in the history of college football. No. So when you have that guy, he's even a red zone. He's unguardable in the red zone because they would motion him and then just let him run. Because you can't stop him.
Because not only can he run the ball and give you 200 yards rushing, he can catch the ball and give you 100 yard receiving. Mm-hmm. He's good outside. Like you said, they throw it to him, and they brought a blitz. They swing him up the outside. He's not just content on catching the ball. Okay, they tackle him here. He's looking to get the ball in the end zone. Yeah. He stops.
You're still talking about DeVonta.
No, I'm talking about Najee.
Oh, I'm talking about DeVonta in the red zone. He's unstoppable.
No, you can't do anything.
How do you do that? He's 107. Don't you think of a red zone target needing to be 6'6"?
Yeah, and he should have had 4 touchdowns. Mac overthrew him on the first touchdown. Yeah. He had him wide open on that when they ran the pick on Wade.
He makes it look easy. We got to say congratulations to Alabama.
Got a stake down there.
Honestly,
you know they favored to win it again.
Special game, a special performance. Congrats to all the athletes for getting through a crazy season. There was a lot of sacrifice.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.